December 24th, 2016. I woke up to receive one of the best presents that I'll ever receive in this life. You see, my wife told me in that moment that our family of two was now a family of three, that she was pregnant. Yeah. It started this season for us, though, of incredible preparation. It started this season of planning and practicing and training, trying to get ready. Like, how do we invite our friends and our family into this new season? How do we get properly prepared? What do we need to do? I started getting overjoyed in just random places. I started tearing up in a Walmart line, which, one, normal people don't do. Two, normal people get concerned when people tear up in the Walmart line. But it happened. We started trying to get the nursery. We didn't even have a nursery, and so how do we create a nursery? How do we get the right things in the right places? How do we get prepared? I started reading these different books on parenting. Books that, to that point, really had no value to me. I'd never even tried to read, but now they mattered so much. Some were logistical books, like Dadding 101, because I had questions, like when do I need to water this thing? How much sunlight does it need? Some of them were on shepherding a child's heart, because I wanted my daughter to be raised up loving Jesus. Amen. And I was like, I don't know how to do this, but maybe these books can help. I started having conversations with dads who had kids, because they're dads, and hopefully their kids love the Lord too, because man, I had so many questions. I started practicing changing diapers on different kids. Because if we're being honest, as a dad, there are just some things I'm not equipped to do. And so this was one of the things I could do. Had to figure out what side's the front, what side's the back, what do I need to do? How do I change these diapers? I had some friends of ours, their daughter was actually born a couple weeks before our daughter. And so we got invited to the hospital, and I got to hold that sweet girl for the first time. And it was really the first time as an adult I had held an infant. And it was awesome to me, one, because I loved that girl right away. But two, because it gave me the confidence to know that I would be able to hold my daughter well when she was born. See, when we found out we were pregnant, it started this 9-month training and practicing period of our life. And to shoot straight, the practice and the training hasn't stopped. But the question that I want us to wrestle with as a church is, why do we practice? I was having a conversation with somebody that I love dearly a few months ago. And he was kind of wrestling with some different things of God's character and what God's calling him to do, and why God made him a certain way. And he had all these questions, and I had this chance to share my testimony of how God has just radically changed my life. The person that I am today is nowhere near the person that I was, that he has changed me in radical ways. I had the chance to talk through how I've discipled other men, how I've had the opportunity to lead other people to Jesus. And I'm talking through all these things, and his response was, yeah, but that's different. You're a pastor. That's what you're supposed to do. I believe that beliefs like that break God's heart. If that's the case, why do we practice? Why do we come to church every Sunday? Why do we huddle up together? Why do we go over God's playbook? Why do we walk through these things? What is the point? What is the goal? Why do we practice? In an effort to answer that question, I want to invite you to open up to Matthew chapter 10. And as you're getting there, you probably realized it at this point, I'm not Bob. That guy's got way too much hair. He doesn't have much hair, but he still has way too much. I get it, you're right. I'm Josh, I'm the student pastor here at SciLife Church. I have the opportunity to lead our student movement, or our student ministry called The Movement. Yeah, it's awesome. I got the best job in the world. And so we are stepping into a new season, as Beth was mentioning. We're stepping into a new series called Live Sent. And this idea that God has sent us with a purpose into our communities, that he has sent us with intentionality into the relationships that we already have. And to help us unpack that, we're going to ask the question, why do we practice? Matthew chapter 10, verse 1, it says this. It says, Jesus called his 12 disciples to him. And so it's just like church, right? He's calling them in. He's saying, hey, we're going to huddle up. Like, we're going to come together. I'm going to call you towards myself. And then he continues, he says, and he gave them authority to drive out impure spirits and to heal every disease and sickness. That word authority, I want us to set up camp here because there's a direct relationship between the word authority and the word ability. If you don't have the authority, you lack the ability. And if you want the ability, you need the authority. Here's what I mean. Confession time. Ever since I was little, up through middle school, guys, I wanted to be a country singer. I kid you not. Like, I wanted that so bad. Like, everything, I was singing all the time. Like, everybody like knew my voice from like my vocal, like they knew all of it, right? Like, I wanted to be a country singer. And so fast forward to now, we have worship, we have concerts, right? Like, we have music every Sunday. What a great opportunity. And so I've been asking Chad Minshew, our worship pastor, I've been saying, hey Chad, let me lead worship. Like, this is gonna be so good. Like, let me be a part of your team. Like, we can even switch roles. Like, you can preach on Wednesdays, I'll lead worship. And he keeps saying no. Because I don't have the authority, I lack the ability. Now, I'm also not a good singer. So that's why it stopped at middle school, right? Like, I had to find other dreams. My dad had a very frank conversation with me. He said, Josh, you're no good. But the point is, because I don't have the authority, I lack the ability. If you want the ability, you need the authority. And so Jesus gives them this ability, right? Like, he gives them this incredible ability. And so what they did, they've got the ability to perform these miracles. And so what they did was they huddled together and they got inside their four walls and they practiced. And they practiced really hard and they got really, really good at practicing, but they didn't share it with anyone. Is that how it ended? No, that's not what happened, right? That's not why he gave them the authority. That's not why they gave them the ability. That's not why we practice. Why did he do it? And this is what we need to remember. Disciples are not fans, they are followers. Disciples are not fans, they are followers. Jesus doesn't give us the ability so that we can stay on the sidelines. Jesus is calling us onto the field, not only to play on the field, but to be in the starting lineup. I was reading one of these quotes is from a book called Not a Fan. I was reading something the author wrote. I thought it really kind of hit home on this. He says, my concern is that many of our churches in America have gone from being sanctuaries to becoming stadiums. And every week, all the fans come to the stadium where they cheer for Jesus but have no interest in truly following him. The biggest threat to church today is fans who call themselves Christians but aren't actually interested in following Christ. Amen. See, Jesus has called you into the starting lineup. He's called us out of the stands and onto the field. He wants to be players. He wants us to be doers, to partake in this mission he's given us of living sent. And almost in response to that, the book of Matthew in verse 2, a couple verses after that, it continues. It starts this kind of announcement of the starting lineup. Like, if you're there right now, you can see it. Like, it's this. I imagine at the beginning of a baseball game, when you kind of they start announcing, hey, these guys are playing. It's like, hey, at shortstop and third base, they left their dad in a boat to be here. Let's hear it for the sons of Zebedee. Right? Like, it gets it. Like, read it with me. It's so fun. There are these are the names of the 12 apostles. First, Simon, who was called Peter, and his brother Andrew. James, son of Zebedee, and his brother John. Philip and Bartholomew. Thomas and Matthew, the tax collector. James, son of Alphaeus, and Thaddeus, otherwise known as the good Judas. Simon, Simon the Zealot. Judas Iscariot, who betrayed him. These 12, Jesus sent out. This is Jesus' all-star team from the beginning. This is the team on which he would build his church. 4 fishermen, a tax collector, which is the equivalent of a trader back then, a politician, several dudes whose job wasn't even worth mentioning. Oh, did I actually mention the guy who later betrayed Jesus to his death? This doesn't sound like a team you'd build your church on. Sounds like a shady car dealership. But your church, Jesus is funny like that. See, most of us kind of have this tension that exists in us. We have this tension because we know that we aren't supposed to just practice. That practice for the sake of practice doesn't gain victories. That church for the sake of church doesn't take ground for the kingdom. See, we know this, but if we are honest, most of us also don't believe that we belong on Jesus' all-star team. Most of us don't feel like we belong. I know I don't. If you're like me, you feel unqualified, undeserving, like a hypocrite. Why would he choose a broken guy like me to be on his team? Why would he choose broken people like you? And Jesus points at his starting team, these 12 men. And he says, I have done more with less. You don't feel qualified? Sure. Are you undeserving? Absolutely. A hypocrite? Most likely. Let's not forget, Jesus gave them the authority and the ability. It wasn't that they earned it. Jesus says, I don't call you because you're qualified. I call you because you're mine. You don't deserve it. This is a freely given gift, but just because it is freely given does not mean that it lacks purpose. Amen. And this is what we need to remember, church. He calls us in to send us out. Amen. Jesus calls us in with the purpose to send us out. He gives us the authority and the ability not to keep it to ourselves, not to practice for the sake of practice. He wants us to compete. This is why we practice. See, when my daughter was born, and it was awesome, when she was born, the time for practicing wasn't over, but the time to compete had begun. It's not that I felt qualified or undeserving, or that I didn't feel undeserving. But it didn't matter because it was game time. Everything that I had done to that point was in preparation for that moment. And therefore, it was time to compete and take ground. And when I held her for the first time, I don't remember fear. I did feel unqualified and I did feel undeserving, but it was a perspective shift because now it wasn't sorrow and shame that I was feeling. It was this gratitude knowing that this gift that was in my arms I could never deserve. And if I'm being honest, despite all the training, all the practice, all the books, I'm still not a perfect dad. But I know someone who is. And he called me out of the stands to step onto the field and to take ground. I want you to think about it. If the disciples didn't share this thing, if the disciples just practiced all day long, they had their little church, they stayed together the entire time. If they didn't make and send disciples that made and sent disciples, this Jesus thing would have stopped with them. We wouldn't be here today. But Jesus called them in to send them out. And he calls us in with that same purpose of being sent. But what does that actually look like? If we jump back into verse 5, we can get an idea. It says, these 12 Jesus sent out with the following instructions. He didn't just tell them, hey, go. He actually gave them the game plan. He said, here's the roadmap. Here's what it's going to look like. Here's what it can look like for us. It says, do not go among the Gentiles or enter any town of the Samaritans. Go rather to the lost sheep of Israel. And we're not going to set up camp here too long, but we know from Scripture, Jesus was called first to his children of Israel, then the rest of the world. That's all that's being said there. What we should take away is that they were given a specific place, a specific field to play within. He said, go to the lost sheep of Israel. And continues, as you go, he gives them the play that they're supposed to run. Proclaim this message, the kingdom of heaven has come near. Heal the sick, raise the dead, cleanse those who have leprosy, drive out demons. Freely you have given, or freely you have received, freely give. He's saying, remember how you felt unqualified. You were right, but I've still chosen you. It's a free gift. You don't deserve it. And so I want you to go out and love those who don't deserve it. I want you to pursue the sick. I want you to chase the lost. I want you to go out and give this gift away. I want you to care so deeply that they're just like, why would they do that for me? I want you to serve so fiercely that everything is called into question because it does not make sense through the lens of this world. He said, I am sending you out. As I was processing through this, I started thinking of something else I read in a book. It's this idea of how smartphones, right? We all have them. Well, who loves autocorrect? I hate it. Like, autocorrect is my nemesis. It changes things all the time. It changed my last name one time, and now that's my permanent nickname on our softball team. Like, it's not awesome, right? Like, it's not good. But there's this one autocorrect that I used to hate, and there's been this perspective shift for me. See, every time I type the word in love, it changes love to live. And it used to be so frustrating because I was like, I don't live you. But I feel like God tricked Apple because it's a reminder for me now that every time that it switches love into live and now I got to go back and I got to fix it, it's a reminder that the way I love is meant to be the way that I live. That's what we are supposed to be known by. And Jesus says, he says, I want you to go around, I want you to share this truth. I want you to show them the authority, the ability that I have given you so freely. I want you to serve them fiercely. I want you not to just practice, I want you in the field. It's time to play. I want you to think about it. Imagine that there is a disease going around. Just imagine. I'm talking pandemic. Like, I'm talking way worse than right now. I go into Kroger, there were no paper towels. I don't know what that's about. That's not how this story ends. I just want you guys to know, that's not how it ends. But imagine there's a pandemic. Everybody's in their homes, everybody's trying to stay safe, and all of a sudden, the cure shows up on your doorstep. And not just the cure, and not just the cure for you and your family, but 7 billion doses. Do you keep it to yourself? No, like you could literally be a terrible human being and you're not gonna keep it to yourself, right? Like you're gonna invite, hey, friends, family, like come in, like come on, like come together. I've got the cure. Like I gotta share this with you. I guarantee you in one day, millions upon millions of people are helping you share the cure. Amen. I guarantee you that they're bringing this thing, they're bringing this opportunity of life, that they're sharing it with all the people around them. Why? Because the freely given gift is being freely given. We'd freely give it away. And Jesus calls us as followers of him with the authority and the ability he has given us, with the answer to the problem, with the cure, with truth. He says, I want you to share it. I've called you in to send you out. This is why we practice. The instructions continue. He says, do not get any gold or silver or copper to take with you in your belts. No bag for your journey or extra shirt or sandals for the worker is worth his keep. And I have to say, overall, this is just terrible parenting advice. Right, like, hey, I'm a student pastor. If one of you said, hey, my senior, he graduated, we sent him out, we gave him no extra money, we said, you got a shirt on your back, you should be happy, no car, like, good luck. I'd be like, hey, can we talk through this a little bit? Right, like my daughter, she went to daycare for the first time the other day. Gave her a spare set of clothes. You just don't know what's gonna happen. I mean, this conversation that Jesus is having with his disciples makes me think of like the Titanic, right? Hey, Steve, you think we need more lifeboats? It's probably fine. We know how that ended for Jack. And still, Jesus is saying, hey, like you need to bring nothing with you. What you've got is what you have. Now go. And here's what he wants us to know in this. He says, disciples don't play it safe. They live sent. Risk is a part of the job description. Risk is what we signed up for. Jesus said, you're gonna risk for the kingdom. If you wanna take ground, it's gonna require risk. I am sending you out. Now go. I've got you covered. The worker is worth his keep. And here's what he means. Let me give you a real life example. When my wife, Jenny, and I and our daughter moved here a year and a half ago, we were sent. I remember having a conversation with Pastor Bob, and he was like, hey, I want you to pray about this job opportunity as a student pastor. I had never been a student pastor before. In fact, my interview process really just kind of entailed me just saying, hey, I'm really unqualified for this job. Here I am. And I had a conversation with God. I said, God, like, if you want this for us, you need to be so clear. Like, you need to speak because we have no reason to want to leave. Like, we want to raise our daughter in this community. I loved my job. Like, my wife had a community of other moms around her. Like, it was this incredible time in our lives until Jesus was saying, hey, I am sending you, and he spoke. Amen. And so we moved here out of obedience, but here's the catch. That doesn't mean that it went super well right away. My wife and I entered one of the toughest seasons of our lives. See, we moved to a new area where we didn't know anybody. And when we moved here, our furniture actually didn't get the notice because it decided not to move for 3 extra weeks. And then when our things came, most of it was broken and damaged. And then the next day after we had moved in, our dog was diagnosed with an autoimmune disease. And 3 days later, I took her for a walk and she died right in front of us. We felt alone. We felt beaten. We felt knocked down. But here's the other side of the story. When we came in, the staff rallied around us in prayer. When we started to need a place to stay because our furniture hadn't actually shown up, we had a family take us in for 3 weeks, even though it couldn't have been convenient for them. We had a bunch of strangers help us move in our stuff that wasn't broken. Then they started showing up with brand new things, like a dresser that the moving company just decided not to take, a mattress that we didn't know we would need, but 3 days later we desperately needed. The vet bills were extreme. To this day, we have no idea who paid them, but we know that it was paid. See, Jesus called us to live sent, and we were obedient. And we came into a community of people who said, hey, we're going to live sent too, and we're going to reach out and care for these total strangers. And because they did that, it empowered us in a broken period of our time to continue living sent and making disciples in the way that Jesus had called us to do it. See, we say we're unqualified and we say we're not prepared. And Jesus took 4 fishermen and sent them out with nothing but the shirts on their backs. Who is more unqualified? Who is less prepared? Why do we practice? Jesus says the worker's worth his keep. He says, I'm going to take care of you. You can trust me. It doesn't mean it'll all go well. In fact, look at the story I just pointed to. It doesn't mean it'll all go well. But he says, I will take care of you. You can trust me. Amen. He highlights that a little bit more in the next couple verses. It says, whatever town or village you enter, search there for some worthy person and stay at their house until you leave. As you enter the home, give it your greeting. If the home is deserving, let your peace rest on it. If it is not, let your peace return to you. If anyone will not welcome you or listen to your words, leave that home or town and shake the dust off your feet. That's the equivalent of brushing your shoulders off, right? Truly, I tell you, it will be more bearable for Sodom and Gomorrah on the day of judgment than for that town. This is the scary part for us. This is the part that really keeps us up at night. This is the part that says, hey, you know what? I can go care for them. I can do all the right things. I can say all the right things. I can do it side by side with Jesus, and still they might reject me. I can be sent to serve someone who turns me away. I can be sent to care for somebody who causes me and my family incredible hurt. And we let this fear turn on us. We let it become a reason why we'll just play church. We can let it become a reason just to practice, to show up on Sundays, or maybe even to small group, but not live sent in our communities throughout the week. In that way, we become a lot like a a football team that huddles up every Sunday but never runs any plays. Right, like we'll huddle together and we'll get really, really close and we'll build those relationships, and sometimes we'll even talk shop. We might even talk about some of the plays that we could run. But if we refuse to run plays, we can't take ground. Listen, I'm a Miami Dolphins fan. This has been our strategy for years. And let me be the first to tell you, it's not working. Right? Like it's not a good strategy. It's not a good plan. Here's the deal. You can have the most talent. You can have the most ability. The Dolphins don't have any of these things, but you can have the most talent, the most ability. You can have the utmost authority. You can have the best playbook. You can have the best coach. You can have all the right pieces in the right places. But if you refuse to run the plays, you cannot take ground. If you practice and never compete, you can never win. It's a fact. A few months ago, I was sitting down with Jesus at a coffee shop. And I was doing my quiet time, and I didn't ask him to ask me this, but he kind of kept pressing this question on my heart. He kept asking it over and over and over. He said, Josh, do you believe in hell? I said, yes, Lord. Like, yes, I believe it's a real place. Like, that's, yeah. He said, yeah, but do you believe hell is a real place? I said, well, I thought so. Like, yes, I believe it's a real place. Like, it's a thing. He said, okay. Do you believe that I'm the only way? I said, yes, Lord, like, absolutely. Like, I know that relationship in eternity comes from relationship with you now. Like, I know that is truth. I know that that is what you tell me. I believe that in your word. Yes, you are the only way. He said, Josh, if that's true, why are there people that you love? People in your life that you have relationship with that don't know me. People that you are in relationship with that are on a path to spend eternity separate from me. And you have the cure. He said, Josh, you have the answer to all those questions, but you are too afraid to share it. As I sat in that coffee shop, Jesus revealed something really ugly in my heart. I was more interested in getting accepted today than them getting accepted into eternity. I was more interested in being welcomed into their house than them being welcomed into the house that Jesus was preparing for them in that moment. See, the reality is many of us have people in our lives that we were sent to with the purpose of sharing his truth through action and through deed. Amen. He has called us to live sent side by side with them. He sent you specifically. But we are so very afraid. I think Jesus answers that even before chapter 10 begins. If you jump to the tail end, I'm talking verse 35 of chapter 9. Verse 35 kind of starts out where Jesus is doing all the things that he gives his disciples the ability to do. He's casting out demons. He's healing the sick. He's chasing the lost. Like he's teaching in the synagogues. All the things he says, hey, go do. He says, I'm already in the field doing it. And there's this moment in verse 37 where he kind of speaks directly to his disciples. He says this, the harvest is plentiful, but the workers are few. Ask the Lord of the harvest, therefore, to send out workers into his harvest field. Jesus is already competing. He's already doing all this stuff. And he says, hey, disciples, come to me. We're going to pray for more workers. And this is the cool part. Immediately after this verse, he calls his 12 in and he sends them out. They were the answer to the prayer that they were praying. Here's why that's important. Because I believe that's why fear doesn't grip them. I believe that's why they didn't say, but I'm so unqualified, but I'm not prepared. You didn't even give me an extra shirt. They don't wrestle with that because there's a confidence that comes from knowing that you have been chosen by a God that does not make mistakes. The catch is that you and I are meant to be that same answer to prayer. We are meant to live sent. This is why we practice. At the Movement, that's our student ministry, we have this saying. I say it all the time. They're probably tired of hearing it. It's your mission field is where your feet are. You see, most of us have already been sent. Where you work, that's your mission field. Where you go to school, that's where your feet are. PTA, Girl Scouts, Boy Scouts, softball team. If your feet are there, there is a very, very good chance that God has already sent you there with a purpose. Amen. There's a confidence in that. See, the reality is you have been sent. The challenge is to live sent. Amen. See, we come to church every Sunday and we small group throughout the week. Not to just talk about the plays. And there's pieces of it that are so good though, right? Like we come together, we build those relationships, right? We huddle together, we celebrate the victories, we commiserate over the losses. Like we come together, we brush each other's knees off, we bear each other up, right? We talk about the times we stumbled and we fumbled. We celebrate everything that God is doing, the way that he's carried us to this place where we can be together in fellowship. But at the same time, that's not where it ends. See, we're called in to be sent out. And here's my personal hope. And this is my hope for you too. I want when I die for all of hell to rejoice because I am finally out of the fight. I want my life to be such a nuisance to hell because I'm so caught up in living out the mission that Jesus has given me. All right. Why do we practice? To compete. Why do we come to church? To live sent. Would you pray with me? Jesus, I recognize that it's much easier to talk about this from a stage and much harder to live out in our lives. So I ask for a special portion of courage as we battle the lies of unqualification and not deserving this thing and the lies of feeling like a hypocrite and being so afraid because what if they reject me? Lord, all those things are real fears. All those things are realities, but at the same time, your courage is our courage and your strength is our strength. And so I ask that you send us out. That on Sundays we come in together, not to just talk, not just to have fellowship, but to gather together in preparation for a battle that you are calling us to fight out in the field. That you are calling us in to send us out and that we can have hearts that are so caught up in your love that we can't help but love the person next to us. That we can't help but be sent to the communities, to the people that you have already built relationships with. God, help us to be your voice. Help us to be your hands. Help us to be your feet. We love you, Lord. Amen.